Absolutely. What up? What's out there? Welcome. This is a $5 Patreon episode, but you already knew that, or it's not. So we don't really know yet until the episode comes out.
You remember when there's a guy came into my show once? Yeah. I think you were on the show too, and I think you were headlining, but I'll call it my show.
It's funny the things you don't remember.
You're right. Well, he came with a potato. He had a sign of potato for me potatoes.
Man. I've had that happened in Boston. There are two moments where I said this podcast has accomplished what it didn't even know it was supposed to accomplish. Like, it came to its natural ending when a fan came to a show after Boston with a baked potato in his hand, and he goes, "Meat and potato."
Well, he handed us a potato, and I went, "Well, what are you doing?" And he went, "Meat and potato." I said, "I still don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
And then when he had to go through the idea of you hand us a potato and we meet you, which we had completely forgotten.
This was two separate occasions. This happened. I wasn't there, actually. You were right. This happened to you in Philly, where it was after you were opening for Michelle in Helium. You were like, "You're not going to believe this. This fan had a potato."
Right. Also,
and I went, "Meat and potatoes." And Greg went, "That's what this is." But yeah, this fan in Boston, he came with two baked potatoes, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I signed his baked potato.
That's so funny and great.
Yeah.
We had a guy come to Levity. I remember at Levity, when I headlined to Levity a few years ago, people turned their hats inside out and did rally caps, which I remember we had mentioned. We was like, do rally caps. They did rally caps.
Yeah. What else I want to say before you said that?
I would argue that there's a good chance that we just do 3 episodes of Friday Night Greg, and Rad Dude Cast just comes right back.
Yeah, man. I think you might be looking at the first episode of Hot Brain and the first episode of Friday Night Greg. And maybe my first episode, the Aqua Podcast. Water Talk.
Well, one thing I have considered, and I don't want to give the fans, false hope. Because we all are excited about kind of a break and doing our own projects and all that. But I have considered that maybe we just need 5 months off, and we might all be like, fuck, I want to do the Rad Dude Cast again. I don't think that's the case, but I have thought,
that's there is enthusiasm.
There is a possibility that
it just goes on forever.
Totally, man. I'm much like Jim Morrison. I'm leaving the doors open.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison's dead.
Well, his door's closed, but much like the alive Jim Morrison,
right?
These doors are staying open.
Jim Morrison, even pretentious in death, because he's buried in Paris, and you're an American. It's like, what are you doing, Jim Morrison? You know what I mean? Your family's got to take a transatlantic flight to see your grave. Come on, man! You get buried where you're from. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, that's a guy who really hated his family.
Yeah. There's Harvey Picar is buried in this cemetery I walked through with a lot. There's kind of like a historic cemetery near my house. John Rockefeller is buried there, and Garfield, the president, is buried there. Not the cat, but Harvey Picar, the from American Splendor. You know who that is?
Yes, cartoonist.
Yeah, well, he's not. Which is interesting. If you ever see the movie with Paul Giamatti, he's a comic book writer. He couldn't draw for shit, which is really funny. When you read those comic books, you're like, there's very little writing. So it's like, Harvey Picar's the headliner on this? How about the guy who fucking drew it, But I guess that's comics in general. But anyway.
Yeah, the guy told him what to draw.
Yeah. There's people go there and they stick pens in his grave, and there's always 1,000 pens, but I didn't it's kind of far from the cemetery road, so I never saw the name. So I was just till Amy pointed it out, I was just like, that guy must have invented pens. I literally thought it was a big time pen guy, and people were like, "Thank you for everything, man. We didn't have ballpoints till you came around." And they have the same shit with Alan Freed, who was a famous Cleveland disc jockey, and he kind of is credited. He's kind of the reason the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland, because he was credited with the first guy to push rock and roll in the 50s, and people will leave guitar picks on his thing, and I always think it's really funny because I'm like, yeah, it's no one good, You know what I mean? It's not like you don't get like Joe Perry from Aerosmith leaving his guitar pit. It's just like it's just like a local guy who plays acoustic guitar and is like, I'm gonna go leave a guitar pick on Alan Freed.
I'd argue there's probably a homeless guy outside of him being like, buy your guitar pick, throw it on the grave. And it's just someone going, for who? And that guy, and they go, I mean, I'll do it. I'll throw a quarter into the fountain. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, man. I'd love to throw something at the dead.
Yeah.
What makes you feel better in life?
There's one grave. There's one grave for some doctor. They just put rocks on his grave. I don't know what he did. I don't know what it is rock related
you put a tomb
or what.
on a stone. That's the thing. You put a pebble on a tomb. What is that?
I don't know. But
you
this
put a pebble on a tomb is a thing.
I brushed him off. I said, "This is disrespectful.
We rock and roll. Get these rocks out of here."
Yeah, come on. This guy's trying to live, or trying to die.
That's what gets me crazy too. People put flowers on graves, so they kill flowers for a dead person.
Right.
But the whole thing about dead person is you're sad they're dead. So how do you do that? You kill something else?
Right.
No. Put a dead canine. Throw a dead German Shepherd on this guy. He loved German Shepherds.
Yeah.
Throw a dead German Shepherd.
I love that. You know what he loved? Money.
Yeah.
So just leave a bunch of money. I'm gonna put on my gravestone. I go, you can pee at this. Yeah, man. Want to feel good? Want to feel like you've got a long-standing vendetta against someone? Pee right here.
Also, there are just people sometimes who have to pee.
Yeah,
and there's no bathroom.
Totally.
Well, it's like, Anthony's grave's over there.
Yeah,
he's still giving. That's how much of a giver he is.
And I go, just be here. Who gives a shit? But don't shit, because then somebody's got to clean that,
right?
And that'll be what it says on my grave.
And also, this is good for the people who have to pee because a dead person's like last wishes are sacrosanct, right? Like you can't go against them. So if the cops are like, "Hey man, urinating in public, that's a class 2 misdemeanor," you go, read the gravestone, buddy. Okay.
Yeah.
He said the guy gave permission. The cops are going, we can't go against that.
Yeah.
We cannot go against his final wishes.
And then the cops have to inspect it for fecal matter. And they go, we found fecal matter. And he did say specifically, do not do that.
Yeah. Question. I want to pivot here.
Yeah.
Let's try to go through our top moments of the Rad Dude Cast. Any moments where you're like, man, that was you the most proud of? You're like, man, that was fucking funny. Or that was good. Or that was... you got any moments?
I have a couple of great moments. So for those newer listeners and that haven't gone back through the archives yet, we used to do, and we kind of grew out of it just because we kind of became a bit more of an honest podcast, and but we used to do kind of full themed episodes, and I was always really proud of them because they were done. And this is a little behind the scenes talk. They were done with really no outlining and no preparation. Just the theme was what we would agree on. So I always loved, and this credit goes to Greg on this. I love the kind of running story of the 7 international immortals. That was so funny to me, so funny and so creative, and that was really Greg heavy in terms of
me. That's Bernie. That's who they are. Yeah.
And then
that's God speaking through me.
So if you haven't listened to those, listen to those. And then I loved the Western podcast, which was, I think, Anthony was Gibby Richards, if I remember, and I was some gunslinger, and Greg was a catfish.
I think he was.
And then there's this great episode that never aired, and it was so funny.
Dallas morning radio show.
The morning radio show is the best episode of anything that ever existed.
Yeah. We did a morning radio show that was so funny, and Greg had these great morning radio show sound effects, like all the fucking classic corny. And when it recorded, it only recorded us. It recorded none of the sound effects. So it was so sound effect heavy. Yeah. It was literally unreleasable, but it was so good. So for me, those are some big moments. What about you, Greg? What stands out? Okay, what about you, Anthony?
Off the top of my head, I'll be thinking about this as the podcast is going on.
Sure, yeah.
Off the top of my head, yeah. I mean, the character ones are those were the most fun to me. I mean, we did the 8 episodes of Dungeons and Dragons. Like that was so much fun.
Yeah, those
were the most fun just because we had, like you were saying, we had zero plan. We had a couple things about our characters that we might have known that we're not really divulging with each other. But it was fun to see where those went. You know what I mean? Like that was always the fun part, because we would have like, all right, a rough idea of who the characters are, what the voices might be, what we're going to do. But the rest of it was like, this could go anywhere. Like there was one episode where I think all we had where we were waking up as babies on a spaceship. Right. And then it just kind of, it was like, wherever it goes from there, it goes. There might be a couple beats along the way we want to hit. But that was the most fun. I mean, it's always been fun. You know what I mean? You're my friends. I love talking and, making jokes with my friends. But when we really, for a little while, were like pushing the envelope of what a podcast could be, that sounds maybe a little narcissistic. And I don't think that was like our intention, but I think that's what was happening. And I just love the idea that we were pushing the envelope of what a podcast could be, and no one was really listening to it. So, and that was so much fun.
Well, that was the thing, right? People always say like, oh, they're just three friends who get together. And it's like, no, the rule was if someone has an idea, everyone has to do it. Yeah. There's no bad, you have to do it. We have to move on. We have to. And it was like really fun. It was a way of doing everything we couldn't do in stand-up comedy. It was like, because we were doing improv and we got all these goofy ideas and shit. It was like, here we could try to do a game of Monopoly.
Yes.
But that people can't see the board. And it makes no sense. And it was, and there was all the failing. It was never about doing a good episode.
Yeah. The Monopoly episode's so funny to me because we were immediately self-aware of how boring it was. Yeah. So it's like a legendary episode for people who are fans of the podcast because they want to be like, how bad was this thing? It's always so funny. And sometimes I'll get a message that's like, I just listened to the Monopoly episode. I just listened to the Forrest Gump episode.
Forrest Gump I wanted to bring up. But the Monopoly episode, I got a message the other day and someone was like, yeah, it's not that bad. And I could be honest with you, I have no idea if it's good or bad. I haven't listened to it 8 years ago. Yeah. No idea. But people were like, you talk about it like it's the worst thing that's ever happened. And it's not that bad.
I don't think it's that bad. It's just that it went right from the Dungeons. They went, because before the Joe run Dungeons and Dragon 8-episode thing that we did like last year, we had a real dungeon master come. This is like one of the first episodes of our podcast.
Right. Yeah.
And that was so fun and creative and action packed. And then we were like, let's play Monopoly.
And then other people did it.
Oh, yes. The drop-off between Dungeons and Dragons. Not really the drop-off between creating your own mythical warriors or just being in the real estate game.
One of already the most boring games when you're in the room playing it.
Yeah.
Listening to someone play it is even worse.
It was just so funny because that was that moment where we're like, it's not about the game. It's about the three of us.
Yeah.
And we can do anything. And then we played Monopoly and went, we can't do Monopoly though. Some things are off limits.
The thing is, we did Dungeons and Dragons before anyone else had done Dungeons and Dragons on a podcast before. And now I'm like, hey, I want to do that. And everyone's like, that's already been done. I go, by us 9 years ago.
Right. Yeah. That's always been the fun issue too, where we've done something, but no one ever listened to the podcast. Right. So we're like, yeah, we did that first year, Ed.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's now a show on HBO.
It's interesting. It's interesting, like what, and I, again, like Anthony said, like, I don't want to be arrogant, but what Greg was saying, like it is interesting what we were trying to do because with this podcast, because like, if you look at like schools of art, or schools of filmmaking, right? They have a mission statement, right? Like rules or a mission statement or like, and that was this podcast was no one can say no. Like none of the three, if one of us comes with an idea, everyone has to say yes. And I think in recent years, not that we've started to say no, but I think we got older and kind of wanted to more talk to you directly and got a little tired of some of the characters. But I think it was really envelope pushing and then like whatever one of us comes with, we have to do, there's no one here is the boss. And I think that was really cool. That was just a new idea in podcasting, I think, and I am very proud of it. I know it sounds silly, like because there's a lot of silly stuff we did, but I am very proud of that we took on these insane ideas and made them fun. Well,
those reflect we were just pranking our fans. Like we didn't have fans, and when we did Forrest Gump, it was like we're gonna read this.
Yeah.
I remember being like, Forrest Gump is an hour and 90-hour movie. It's a 90-minute movie.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll read the script. It'll be most of that. I think we got through like 5 page
We
scripts
did like
to
half
reading.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we just changed the ending. So you had to listen.
Yep.
You had to listen to a horrible version of Forrest Gump to find out where we changed it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people would do it. That was like the challenge. Like,
Yes.
can you get through the Forrest Gump episode? Which was way worse than the Monopoly episode.
Yeah.
But yet the Monopoly episode gets all the credit for being the worst episode.
I think it's a Monopoly. Well, I think because it was the drop off and we talked about it so much. And then the Forrest Gump episode, we were like, that it's different. What we're doing,
Right.
even if it's bad, we try to do a different thing. Playing Monopoly was just like, oh, that was just a clear like A to B from the Dungeons and Dragons episode.
Right.
But the Forrest Gump thing was like, hey, I'm not gonna feel bad about doing an idea that's so out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But when we started the podcast too, it was like we were doing it in the living room. We was first with 8 people was the first one.
Yeah.
And then it was I would set up in my room
Right.
a table with wires. We had no money. I remember being hungry. We had no food.
Yep.
Brendon would come over and it was like, you'd got whatever. And then it was like, take these fucking wires apart because Tita's coming home from work. And literally when we would set it up, it was like that pool table in Kramer had,
Yeah.
where like all of the equipment took the entire size of the room.
Yeah.
Because I was living in a 3-bedroom with 4 people.
Yeah.
Put it in a
Sometimes
box.
5.
Sometimes 5 who had cancer.
Yeah.
And then sometimes someone who'd got
Yeah.
married for a little while.
Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. And then now we're in a place where it's like, oh man, the podcast has its own room, right? There's look at
Brendon's
this
in
equipment.
Cleveland.
It's a 4K. Brendan's in Cleveland. We're doing it over line, online. We had Chingy on the. You ever said we're gonna have Chingy on the episode?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
That was gonna be my other thing where I said the podcast came to its natural end. It accomplished what it didn't know it was trying to accomplish, which was having Chingy on as a guest while his uncle made ribs in the background.
Yeah.
I was like, we've done what we came to do.
right.
And we didn't know we were coming to do this.
What
Well-
could we have done? What did we miss? So go ahead, Brendan. Sorry.
And also, like, I mean, so that those days in Greg and Anthony's old apartment were so funny because we'd mostly do it in Greg's room, but then sometimes we'd do it in Anthony's room. But Greg and I had to be like strict because you couldn't let Anthony sit on the bed because he'd go to sleep. He'd go to sleep. So that was like no other podcast out there. Yeah, no other podcast out there.
No one was bringing
had
that to
be
the
like,
table.
hey, you can't lay down while you're speaking in the mic because we know you're going to go to sleep. And it was like, it was great.
He would eat.
Yep. Your boy was ahead of his time.
He would eat into the microphone. And I remember getting messages like, hey, I really like the podcast, but the sound of someone chewing makes me ill.
Yeah. And you know what I'd say back to you? You don't really like the podcast. Because if you loved the podcast, you wouldn't say that second sentence.
Those were like the only rules we ever had to like establish. It was like no rules podcast. And Anthony was like, oh, I'll make some rules. And like, you can't go to sleep. You can't go to sleep and you can't pour water on the equipment.
Well, first of all, I'm raising the level of the equipment. Now you know. Now you know that this
Now I know.
equipment, it's not as good as it advertises. And then the second thing about me falling asleep, that was for you guys. That was so you guys would be more entertaining. That would go, we got to keep, not only we got to keep this guy engaged, we got to keep him awake.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was, I'll toot my own horn and say I was way ahead of my time.
Oh, no, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, I hate to sound, I don't want to sound whatever, but it's like, that's all the things that made it kind of, all the chinks in the armor. It's like your flaws are what make you characteristic. It's like not your flaws, but it's like these are the things that make you like not you, the podcast,
right?
Different and beautiful.
Right.
These crazy weird things that were happening.
Yeah, it was a way for people to describe the podcast. If they were like, "What's the podcast about?" It's like they're 3 friends, 2 guys try to keep this other guy awake the whole time.
And 5 with so many producers. We had we had 1 fight. Maybe 1 or 2 fights.
A couple
In
more.
8 years.
Yeah,
Many
we've
fights.
had many fights, but
On the podcast?
But you know
Really?
what? You know
I don't remember
something.
I'm gonna fight about this.
Yeah, you know
Actual
something.
fight?
You know,
Yes, man.
I would tell you something
At least 5.
that makes me
Over 10 years. That's not
I'll
bad.
tell you something that makes me very, very proud. And that is because generally, I mean, Anthony occasionally Anthony gets heated, but about different things. But usually the fights would be me and Greg because we're very sensitive and, we're just fucking too sensitive.
A caveat there. It's because Anthony goes inside of his shell and then you have to talk about it 5 days later.
Sure.
But you and I will just start screaming.
Right.
And Anthony goes, I'm mad. I'll call you in a week.
But one
Yeah,
thing,
well, I'd like to process what I'm mad
It's
about.
like Tito. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
right. But one thing I think
Crunch the numbers.
I'm really proud
feelings.
about through this podcast is the development we've had. Like we go back to like when we were working at that piece of shit, The Knock. You know, Anthony
Right.
had a sports show that we all wrote on, and I don't even know, that might have been before the podcast.
It was.
Yeah, it was before the podcast, and like there was a time because we just weren't used to, and also we didn't know. None of us really had experience writing on a show, so we didn't know how fucking wrong that place was. Really, we just kind of went along. I mean, we knew they were doing it wrong, but we didn't really know the process was fucked up, and so we just kind of were doing what they told us to do. And there was a time when Greg and I were literally, it was like 3:30 a.m. in the morning, and Greg and I don't know if you remember this, we were screaming at each other in the middle of Fifth Avenue at 3:30 a.m. And I'm so proud that both of us have come such a long way, and like, you know, and we don't really fight anymore, but whatever our most recent fight was, like, we can just call each other and talk. And it's like, oh yeah, we've improved. Like we've learned
people.
and grown as people, where we're able to like handle differences in opinion. And like that part of that has been through this podcast. And you know, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of us, you know.
No, for sure.
And fuck The Knock.
Yeah, I mean, we started as a podcast where literally it almost ended because we didn't have a soundboard, and between three of us, we couldn't pay for a new soundboard. And
Katie Mears.
Katie Mears. Yeah, but you know, I always go Whitney. Where's that Whitney? Katie Mears. I want to say her last name anyway, but yeah, she just bought us a $75 soundboard.
Yeah.
And we used that for years
Because she was in college at the time, and we made her our weather girl.
Right.
Because we thought that would be funny to always check in on the weather.
Yeah.
But
that's how broke we were.
Yeah, no, we were broke. I mean, that's what's
Broke.
probably interesting to go back and listen to the beginning of the podcast and just hear us talk about comedy. Because
Right.
we're all in such different places now.
Yeah.
But to hear us, it's like, I don't even know if we were featuring on the road then. You know what I mean?
No, we
so
were doing
like
the creek.
Right. So to hear us kind of go through the stages of doing stand-up comedy, I think is very interesting to listen to.
Except I don't know if we had real conversations in the beginning. It was mostly
We would go behind the curtain a little bit.
spaceship talking.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot, mainly a spaceship talk show. But we would, we would go behind the curtain a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this thing now, and it's like this PV I remember I bought for $75, and I was like, yo, this is a nice thing.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, man, I should, now we could get better stuff. It's like, it's fucking
Well, it's
crazy where we've kind of, how this thing was through our entire journey, except that Tita has always been here.
Well, yeah, Tita's always been here. It's also kind of funny too that like when we started, podcasts weren't humongous. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it was that happened a little bit into us doing the podcast, so that it was like, hey, podcasts are going to be a revenue stream for comedians,
Right.
and their main place of exposure. So we didn't start being consistent about the Rad Dude Cast until like 3 years ago. The first 5, the episodes came out whenever,
Right.
and we would go, I wonder why we don't have fans. It's crazy. And it was
Someone
just
told
like,
that. I remember
yeah.
someone being like, you got to do it every week.
Yeah.
And I went, this is a crazy, everyone knows now it needs to come out once a week.
Yeah.
But I remember someone like once a week.
Well,
We put it out when we put it out.
yeah, midnight on Wednesday, 6 a.m. on Saturday, man.
Yeah.
Who cares? And then I thought it was really funny too that man, not only that, but like we just took breaks.
Yeah. Well,
No podcast has done
I
that.
hate to argue
Push
this
the
point.
envelope.
We didn't take breaks. You took a break, and I couldn't do it alone. Brendon was in the funny farm.
Right.
And I remember working at the break with Michelle Wolf and having the soundboard in my desk.
Yeah.
Like, we got to record this. And you went, I think we should take the summer off. We did the
Yeah.
summers off. And I was like, I mean, we were all, I was done too. I was so tired.
Yeah.
So it was not
We couldn't
100%
do it.
you. We couldn't do it. And you were the one who was smart enough to go,
We won't be able to do this.
you can't do
Yeah.
this, right? We can't do this. But I remember, I always think I have enough energy for everything, and then immediately learn when I'm screaming
Yeah.
at a guy in the deli that I'm like, I don't have that kind of energy.
This might not be about you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but that's why we took that break. I
Well,
didn't mean to call it the funny farm, Brendon. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That it was that's it's very insulting, but it's no, but that's another thing. It's like that was meant a lot. Like because I think on some podcasts, if and I probably not most, but I think some podcasts, if a guy had to go away for health reasons for essentially a year and a half, he'd be replaced. And I wasn't. Like, as soon as I was ready to come back, it was like, start back up, you're back, and that meant a lot. Like, that was a big part for me of getting back in the saddle, was like, oh, like stand-up's gonna be slow to resume, like, because I was out of the game for so long. But I'm right back into the Rad Dude Cast. And that was huge. Like, that was huge in building back my confidence, building back, like, oh, I'm working, feeling like I'm working. I mean, we weren't really making any money on the podcast at the time, but that was a huge thing. Like, that meant a lot, that I could just come right back. A lot of podcasts, I think you go away for a year and a half, they're going to get someone else, like, and so that was a big deal, to be able to, that meant a lot. And also the thing about breaks, it's interesting because now, like, I guess we were just never big enough to take breaks, because it is funny, because like the podcast, like the true crime podcasts I'll listen to, that's really all I listen to, which are huge. I mean, that kind of dominates the podcasting world. They'll just be like, okay, see it. Okay, see you in the spring. And it's just like, what? And it's like, yeah, well, they're huge. They can take 4 months off when they need
but they also know when they're coming back.
Right.
We would take breaks like, I don't feel like doing it today.
Yeah.
No, next week either.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a schedule, I think it's like, they are doing, I mean, the work schedule of a podcast is what once a week, sometimes 2 times a week,
sometimes
4 times a week for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's like a wrestling. So you gotta like a scheduled time off, I think is huge.
This is a show, right? Shows have seasons.
Right.
Why wouldn't it be the same way?
Because we're afraid to lose one subscriber. So for our own health.
But I would say not us. We'll take off 6 months. Whoever comes back, they were real fans.
Yeah, dude. We had to drop off because we were doing the best we had ever done at one point, where we was like, I remember at one point we were at like, this is the beginning on, it was like 4,000 to 7,000 listen, like an episode. Then we took the summer off and it went down to 3,000. We lost more than half of our audience at that time. And I went, oh, what the fuck? And then we just kind of like started going again. But yeah, I mean, I do want to say too, what is kind of fun about the thing is that like the idea that like there are just episodes where Brendon wasn't here and we were here, like, we don't know if he's going to be alive.
Yeah.
Like that was a very scary time that we were like, oh, Brendon, like, we're doing this podcast just so we have something to come back to. But we don't know if he's coming back.
Right.
And to your credit, like, you made full recovery. You're back. And now I'm firing you both for Adam Ferreira.
He's good.
That was always the plan.
Good.
Let's face it.
I tell you, this conversation I had with him, he's this. First of all, I don't know Adam Ferreira that well.
No, he's super
He's
nice.
the nicest guy in comedy. I remember meeting him at Levity Live, and he was so nice. I met him, and he was like, "Oh, hey man, listen, your podcast is so funny." And I went, "What? What are you talking about?" And then he was like, "You should do mine. I'll do yours." And I went,
"That's great."
Okay, but this is this episode is next week.
We should have brought him in for the last episode.
I just went, you want to do the first episode of Friday Night Greg? So
I love that.
You guys want to come on that?
I loved if Adam Ferreira was the last episode. Like, you guys have been asking him. We finally got him. The guy from Nurse Jackie. He's here.
He was on Nurse Jackie? I know him from Top Gear.
Yeah. Everyone knows him from a different thing. He's great.
He's so funny.
Yeah, go ahead, Brendo.
I also love something I love about, like, that I think shows like the purity of what we were trying to do, and in part the stupidity, but also the purity. We've had so many producers over the years that just have had to tell us, you have to introduce the podcast and you have to ask people to subscribe. And we're just kind of like, we'll try, but I don't know, man. We got a lot to talk about.
They're wrong. We record it once and then you put it at the end. Mike knows that. I think Mike does that, but it was always like, yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
What I said was,
I thought that'd be a funny joke.
What I said was, when you guys come in as characters and don't even say who you are, you should have an intro that says
Blast
this
back,
is the
Mike.
Rad Dude
Hell yeah,
Cast.
man. Fuck you, Brendon.
No, I was giving credit to Mike. I'm talking about other producers at
Yeah.
the beginning who were like, hey man, you need to introduce
Yes.
it live, and was like, no, that's not what we do. So
We
you
do-
got to figure out how to deal with us.
Yeah,
We don't figure out how to deal with you.
Take your briefcase home. We do art here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Mike, we weren't talking about you. You're the best.
No, we currently have a person who is still selling our merch and not giving us any money for it and won't take it off their website. And I don't know how to deal with that. There's just
We're going to court.
that's not the Teespring one. Feel free to keep purchasing from Teespring.
I'll tell you this, man. If I had 6 months where I was like, I have nothing to do, I'd love to get in a litigation. I'd love who can I sue? How can I be enveloped in a 6-month long court case? I'd love to do that. But there was something else I wanted. Yeah, no, we've had so many people throughout the years tell us like, you got to do this, you got to do that, and we've said no to for a podcast that says yes to everything during the podcast, we've said no to every bit of advice we've gotten from outside sources.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like the three of us, if you were just like, why don't we do an episode? It's about a rooster who's now a scholar, who hates his wife, who's a chicken because they've got a long-standing feud. We'd be like, that's a great idea. But if somebody from the outside was like, you guys should drop the episode every week, once a week, we'll go, get out of my face, you square.
Not my style, not my pants. Try those on somewhere else, pal. That's what I would tell you. Yeah, and it's a sad thing. It's like, I think COVID is what killed this thing. You know, really.
No, Zoom killed it.
Well, COVID is what brought on Zoom.
Oh, that's a good point. And what happened? Where did COVID come from?
I would say probably old school radio.
I'm not talking about.
I think it was FM radio who's trying to ruin podcasts.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying I wasn't winking at China. I was winking at bats.
Yeah.
Did I tell you? Sorry, just a quick aside.
Yeah.
That I think I probably already told you this, but I went to the Bronx Zoo and they shut down the bat house because of. It's because
that's so funny.
They're psychos who are going to go in there and you killed my grandmother, you son of a bitch, right? The bat house is all closed at the zoos.
You got to do this as a bit on stage. That's so funny.
I don't know how to explain it.
No, people will get it. They'll go because I've seen people talk. It's kind of funny the material that I've seen come out of the pandemic because the people that have like jokes like observations that no one has are very interesting. You know what I mean? Right. Kind of the blankety ones are like, who kind of cares? Like we all went through this terrible thing. I kind of want to hear about it.
Yeah.
But like you saying that, it's like nobody knows that side of the pandemic. That the bat exhibit is now shut down at the zoo because too many people were strangling the bats because their grandmother died of COVID. Yeah. That's so funny.
Not all bats.
Yeah. That's
And I like a guy who goes there and he's not a full psychopath. You know what I mean? He just goes there and he stares them down. Doesn't even kill him. You know, he's mad, but he's not fully crazy. So he just goes there and just goes, fuck you.
Yeah. Dude, I'm sure there's somebody walked in there and grabbed the person who works there and went, where are the Chinese bats?
Yeah.
They go, what do you mean? I'm just looking for the Chinese ones.
Yeah.
I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Also, this is pivoting a little bit back to the podcast, but one of my favorite things too is when I'd get a message about a bit on the show that I had no idea happened. You know what I mean? Because we would black out, do these, forget everything we said, move on with our day, and then somebody would message me and be like, "Hey man, when you did that half potato chip character and you said this," and I would go, "That does sound hilarious."
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Brendon. Sorry.
It's so funny because so many times there'd be messages where people would be like, "Hey, do the crab rap group again," and they didn't understand. It's like, "Oh, we can't. Literally don't remember the characters. We don't remember the voices.
And I won't look it up.
Yeah, and I won't look it up. And even if I looked it up, I don't think I could do the voice again because these are one-offs, man. I know you got a tattoo of the crab rap guy on your leg, but sorry, it's over."
Do you know how many messages I've got? This happens all the time where I feel really bad because I feel it's like egotistical. People will message me and say shit like, "Hey, you need a little net for a little kid," and I go, "That's hilarious," and they go, "You said it."
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, I'm not trying to laugh at myself."
Yeah.
I guess, of course, I'm going to think what I said is funny, but I didn't know that when you messaged. I've messaged someone back like a month later because someone else referenced something I said. So I had to find the message and go, "Hey, man, I wasn't laughing at my joke to me. I thought you were just saying that was funny. I didn't realize that that's a thing that me and Anthony and Brendon talked about on the podcast."
Yeah, and can we park it here for a second, too? The fact that people...
Let's park it here.
Ben Wyatt got a tattoo of one of the characters on the...
Mr. Ridges.
Yeah. No, I think he has a crab.
Yeah, he has the.
He
crab.
also has Mr. Ridges.
He also has Mr.
He has
Ridges.
two
Wow,
Rad
good
Dude
for him,
Cast.
And
man.
there's someone
Two
else.
Rad Dude Cast.
A couple
And-
other guys have one. I have mine. Mine's just a wolf that says RDC. But
I didn't know that.
there's
Wow.
like there's
Well,
like,
he always wanted a wolf. He just put RDC over to please us. But
there's
Yeah,
like
he can change what those initials mean whenever he wants.
yeah,
there's like I don't
Round
know, there's
Dick Club.
5 or 6
Because all got
people.
roundies.
That
Go ahead,
should
Brendon.
I think that equals like I think round dick club. What kind of what do you mean? It's opposed to square? Which way round are you talking?
They're roundies.
Yeah. I think that should count like in terms of audience size. One fan with a tattoo counts for 1,000 fans.
well, yes, of course.
You know what I
And-
mean? Like,
yes.
because that's a real fan. That guy
Yeah.
got a tattoo of a podcast.
And what's the tattoo? Well, it's not just the name of the podcast. It's a crab that was one of the characters
Yeah,
on the podcast.
One
that he can't
episode.
even remember doing.
Yeah.
He has a body his whole life.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what the crab rap was. If you had a bullet, you had a gun to
I'll tell you
Tita's head.
What can I say this right now?
Yeah.
Crab Rap Group. It's it's in the name.
It's exactly what it is.
I'll tell you what. Show me one guy with a wait, don't tell me tattoo. You won't find him. There's none. Okay.
Is that a bit we did? I don't understand.
No, that is I think it's Ophira Eisenberg's podcast.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
it's
her.
an NPR
Yeah.
podcast.
It's an NPR podcast, and no knock on that at all. I'm
Right.
just saying they don't got tattoos.
Right. He
now-
does have a tattoo.
I want to talk about.
Legion of Skanks.
Oh, yeah.
There are a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
Legion of Skanks.
Yeah, it's like a
tattoos lined
blood
up.
dripping hockey mask.
Yeah, it's pretty
This
cool.
guy's a fun crab with sunglasses on.
And it's almost always right next to that little running man from the Juggalos with an axe. They squeeze it in next to that guy. I want to talk about this for a second. Favorite jokes, and these are hard to remember. There's been so many jokes, but there's
Wait, before we
one-
move on, though, I did want to
Okay,
step
go
with
ahead,
that.
go
I
ahead,
did
go ahead.
always. What the big letdown of tattoos in this podcast was I always wanted someone to get a tattoo that said "property of Greg Stone," right above their pussy
Oh boy.
or their dicks,
Yeah.
or their
Not too
buttholes,
late. It's not too
like
late.
like Harley Quinn and the Joker.
Let's just say the optics on that don't look good.
Oh, only if you're white. I gotta say, only if you're white. You gotta be white.
Oh yeah, right.
Maybe.
Still doesn't look good. This is a white only purchase.
Anyway, sorry, Brendan. Favorite joke.
So, favorite jokes, which is a very hard thing to come up with because there's been so many, and it's like I'm sure there's amazing ones that we've forgotten. But one, my favorite that I can remember because I think about it a lot is Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac describing his house and how big it is, and then just off the top of his head going, but there's no windows. And that was so fun. I don't know why that's so fun. It's just so funny. A guy, and it was just great improv by Greg, but it's so funny to describe a mansion and just be like, but there's no windows. Yeah, there's no motherfucking windows.
It's
no
so
windows.
funny.
There's no windows.
It's so fucking funny. And it's like, I don't know why. I don't know why it's not funny, but it's so great. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Who's the radio? I would say probably the later episodes. One of my favorite things is I want to just make sure that I give Brendan his dues.
Yeah.
Is what's the radio guy who came on with I did the Sasquatch guy.
Derek Gigabyte.
They get good, but those were fun.
Yeah.
and those
Those
were
were
later
great.
episodes. But I was like, oh,
Yeah.
those were fun. Those were some of my faves.
Yeah. For me, it's hard.
It's so hard. I
It's
can't.
hard. I remember there's so many times while we did the podcast that I was like aware that I was like, this is the hardest you laugh. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like this
right.
is when you're laughing the most or having the most good of a time. So there's too many to pick from, which is what a great problem to have.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like,
Right.
and I'm not saying like that this is like a collective, even the fans would be like, I don't think it's that funny, but being in the room during those moments, there's too many to choose from, and that's so cool.
Yeah, I hate to do what I thought. I will never listen to it.
Right.
So I don't know if it's as funny as I thought it was.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think one of my favorite episodes was always I just thought the idea of these two radio DJs on 9/11
Oh yeah.
who
that's fun.
refuse to acknowledge that this is a big deal
Carbon fiber and sweatpants.
because because that must have happened. Someone must have, because I remember that feeling of being like, this isn't a big deal. And there's these two hip hop DJs, and then R. Kelly came on and was like, y'all better understand this is a big deal. I was like, that was like one of my favorite. That was one of my favorite ideas, I think, but I don't know if it was funny. Like, I don't know if it was good.
Yeah, but to do it was a great time.
On paper.
Yes.
Great idea.
Yeah.
I think we've had a lot of things where I'm like, a lot of great ideas. I think I love the ones that didn't pan out.
Yeah.
They were like, this is good. That did not work.
Yes. I think that's the best, the Rad Dude Cast best. Ambitious ideas, poor execution.
There's also like all of us, especially when we were doing a lot of character stuff. Like, if you go back, and I think our fans, I think you guys, and I don't know for sure, but I think you guys kind of have years of enjoyment there for you, because if you go back, there's so many like Easter eggs we've sort of snuck in, especially with the characters. Like, for instance, and this, we kind of always would blow over this when it was mentioned. It wasn't mentioned enough, but if I remember correctly, Hainsborough can write, but he can't read. Which is impossible, but that's just a thing that we would say as a statement and just move on. Like, that was just like, yeah, of course, Hainsborough can write, he can't read, and it was just like, but legendary. But there's so many like little things like that are just thrown in throughout, peppered in throughout the characters. That like, there's a lot of stuff to find that you might not hit you the first time you've listened to it. I don't know, man.
I think we've invented enough characters where if you went through and did a complete character list of the Rad Dude Cast with like attributes about those characters, you could play a board game.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that would be like a very like fun, like there could be a like, and there's
a universe.
There's a lot of our fans out there who are bored and intelligent. Right. If you wanted, I mean, you could put together a book of the Rad Dude Cast universe, and I think it would be very entertaining.
I would have loved, I mean, that's the thing, is I just never had the time, but I always wanted to go through, and someone had started this a bunch of times. People have done, I think, some of these character lists and stuff, but just I still wouldn't go back and listen to them. But like, I would have, things I never got to do. One was the Rap Dude Cast, where we rap for the entire episode. Was a dream.
We've tried.
We may have tried. I don't think we did it, but I always wanted to do like a full hour of rapping that I would fully write like Hamilton. And then Hamilton came out later, and I was like, you stole my idea. Yeah. Right. And then the second idea was to legitimately write the Rad Dude Cast movie, where I could bring in all kind of like Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Bring in every single character to stop in, but it was just too much. That was too much work. It was like, it's just too much work to go back and listen.
Man. Yeah, no way.
Maybe one day you'll get the Rad Dude Cast movie, because this could have been a cartoon. I always like, man, this, especially when Harumi made that little cartoon, I was like, damn it, if we could have just gotten famous enough for someone to listen to this and go, this is a TV show. This is an alternate universe cartoon TV show.
Here's the thing, it still can be. You know what I mean? What I mean by that is that like the characters are there, the work is there.
Right.
If it's only a matter of just like figuring out how do we make this an animated show.
Well, but you know what's interesting about that is like it's like too big. You know what I mean? Like it would require like 30 separate comic book. And then like maybe they'd come together as a four. Like there's so many you'd have to pick like the main 10, because there's like, I don't know, we've done hundreds of characters. It's like too much.
Well, I know who the main characters are. Ray Romano.
Yeah. Bernie Mac.
Bernie Mac. Like, it's like Hainsborough is definitely going to be in almost every episode.
Yeah. Wabe.
And Mr. Rich Wade?
Oh, Wade.
Wade was one of my favorites, and I have no idea why. I remember his voices. I know nothing about him.
Yeah, Gary the Puppet. I mean, there's so many.
Oh, the head of the CDC in the 80s.
Yeah.
Tough James.
Sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like goods. I mean, it would have to revolve. I mean, there's a religion. There's the seven, the seven immortal people, which was.
I think if there was going to be a show or a comic or whatever, I think it would sort of have to me the iconic story of the Rad Dude Cast is the 7 international immortals. I think it would have to wrap up the characters in that storyline, because that was like that was like it always comes back to that for me, where I'm like, that was our grandest achievement. That was this story that essentially Greg was the primary author of, that was like a saga, this ongoing saga of like the universe, the fucking fate of the universe, and George Costanza and fucking Sully Sullenberg and whoever
There's
else.
7 people who are the only people who make changes in the world.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just straight whatever, but they go in and they manipulate and they change, and they're ever changing as well. And they can't be dead and they can't be.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah, we wrote so many first draft screenplays
Jesus
on the Rad Dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Greg and I improvised Rush Hour 5. And I'm not saying it makes sense as a story,
No.
but we did it
But no one
for
ever
an hour and a half.
no one ever did a Rush Hour movie where they never even got out of the car.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an hour of them in the car
Yeah.
to just talking about the radio or whatever the hell they were
The
talking
villain
about.
had to walk by. Ricky Tan had to like just walk by, and they were like, "Lee, I think that's him." Like, so
halfway through, you were the other guy.
Yes.
We just changed and we
Yeah,
forgot
yeah.
who we were doing.
yeah, we've made so many full projects of
Yeah.
dumb shit on this podcast, and nothing's made me happier than the catalog of work that we have.
For sure.
Honestly,
I also love the sheer number of episodes where beforehand we said, all right, we'll start with this, then we'll do this, and this. And it just never, ever got past the thing we said we were going to start with. That was always the full episode.
80%. 80% of these episodes was someone going, hey, look, I want to talk about how I stole a bike the other day, and then we're going to bring in Gary Shandling, and then we'll bring in it. And then the episode starts, and Anthony goes, my grandma! And we go, and we're just doing grandma stuff for an hour, and we never touch any of the things on the docket.
yeah, we've left more on the floor than we've done. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been amazing to just have this itch be scratched every week that can't be scratched during stand-up or really anything else in comedy.
Yeah. It's funny, too, because I would do these other shows, and I remember this was a big, like, career moment for me, or not like artistic moment for me, where I was like, I would always be myself on this podcast, then I'd go on other podcasts and be other Greg.
Right.
And then the transition became to me finally becoming full Greg on
Right.
other people's podcasts, and then finally, hopefully, on stage. You know, to finally be able to bring this Greg to stage and to get crowds to see that Greg is like the dream. And I think that that's kind of what doing 4 episodes or 3 episodes a week and eventually coming out of the pandemic has kind of helped a lot with, was me being like walking on stage and being like, y'all, there ain't no windows in this motherfucking room. And we'll go, I don't know why, but I'm laughing at this.
Yeah.
You find your voice when you have to talk a lot.
Right.
You know?
But that's the thing I think as a stand-up thing, is that like you constantly performing for audiences who don't know you.
Right.
Your jokes have to be a certain way so they'll get you.
They have to be broad. They have to be funny for everyone.
Not even that so much as, I guess, but also like you're giving them always the beginning of the iceberg of what you want to do. But then when I'm performing for 2 people who think I'm very funny,
Right.
I'm giving you the most Greg immediately, because I'm only performing for you 2 and you laugh. So then when I walk on stage, it became a thing where it's like, well, I can't be that guy anymore.
Right.
And turns out that guy does make them laugh too.
Right.
But I needed this to get there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I needed my friends to support me for 8 years.
Right. Also, very rare that it's called the beginning of the iceberg and not the tip. It's like the start of to give that impassioned speech like you gave, but then to screw that one part up is so funny to me.
Yeah.
It's just like the start of the iceberg. And then you go into this whole port.
That's what's funny is that I've said something like that on stage before, and I literally hear a guy go in the crowd being like, yeah, it's not get ready, set, go. He's laughing. He's like, he said ready, set, no? What is he talking? That's hilarious. This guy's just saying things.
So funny if that's the dialogue. When you say that in the beginning, give this speech, you're crying in the end of it, and then one guy goes, it's tip of the iceberg.
That's like the famous Martin Luther King Jr. speech. I have a sleep thought. What?
Oh, man.
How come no one's ever done a whipped dessert called Martin Luther's cream? And it's whipped cream. It's chocolate whipped cream. Martin Luther's cream.
Perfect example of what Brendon just said.
What?
We were like, we'll reminisce about the Rad Dude Cast. I guarantee the rest of this episode we'll be talking about this Martin Luther scream. Wait, explain it to me, Greg.
Oh well, actually, you actually made me think of something else, which is it'd be funnier if the Scream movies were made by Martin Luther and they were titled Martin Luther's New Epic Dream, Martin Luther's Scream, and it's Scream written by Martin Luther King.
Yeah, Dr. King had a lot of projects outside of civil rights. He wanted to make movies. The guy.
Yeah, you never really get that though. You know, you get these guys who like Martin Luther. Like I will do a podcast and stand up and write a beat and make beats and do paintings. But Martin Luther King, I would have loved to have seen his pilot. You know, he did a Seinfeld pilot that never got out. You know, that he was trying to send out.
That's why he's not known for that. It wasn't good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why, you know, he probably did. He probably like, you got to see my miniatures. Bro is like, don't ever tell people about this. These are horrific, Martin.
Yeah.
Just stick to changing the world. You lunatic.
I got to say this. This obviously probably should have been at the beginning or the end, but I'm going to say it now before I forget. Please, Thursday, this Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. For those of you that are in that Patreon level, will be the final live episode. I'm pretty stoked about it, but we'd love a crowd there. So I forgot to promote it at the beginning, and I know I'm going to forget to do it at the end. So just while it was on my mind, sorry to interrupt, I thought I'd bang it in there. 8:30 this Thursday.
How do they do it? How do they get it?
They get it on the Patreon, right? Click on that motherfucker right in that Patreon level you're at. I think you got to be a $15. No, a $10. You got to be a $10 man to get in there. Or
well, so yeah, you sign up. This is the last chance to give Brendon and Anthony your money.
Yeah.
Before they start taking out of my pocket.
According to our contract.
Yeah.
Whatever the money is, we get a share of that from this month. So if you could boost the numbers so high where Brendon and I get this share for the rest of the year, that'd be great.
I know.
If it goes beyond that number, we do not get any money. So you're really be doing Brendon and I a huge service. Whatever you do, Friday Night Craig, beyond that, Bafangul. Do whatever you like. But
the dream for me is everyone to drop off now. Drop off now. Hide a month. Come back in a month. Bring the load down.
Right.
And then you know.
That's also an option. If you'd like to screw a man who battles constant psychosis and another man who pays for his mother to live.
Yeah.
Go with Greg's plan.
No, go with Brendon's plan.
The selfish plan.
Look, I'll be honest. You know what my plan is? My plan is to make so much goddamn money on this new thing that I'll just keep paying you guys forever.
Wow.
And then I'll fly Brendon back.
So there's also that too. Currently, we make 20% each over the course of a year. I don't think we've pinned down a year.
Greg seemed to be uncomfortable with you giving him the giving everyone
like.
the whole details, and you just continue to really push it out there like it's public knowledge.
I woke up late. I didn't get to have my juice.
You know what?
But this is boosting my energy.
Because I don't know if this deal is so good or so bad. Either A, someone's going to message me and be like, well, also, I didn't come up with the deal. You guys did. You just messaged me, and the deal was we went, all right, whatever you want. Whatever anyone says, we'll just do. And then you called me and said that.
I went with raw numbers.
You just came back with any number. But all right, well, that's what we'll do. God knows how this is going to work for me. This could ruin me financially, or it could be ruining you financially. You know, maybe it's all Rad Dude Cast fans who stay on, and they're only, you know. So I don't know. I don't know what any of this is.
Either way, somebody's getting ruined.
No lawyer looked at this. No lawyer or anyone with any kind of understanding of numbers took a look at this deal that you guys pitched. We just whatever is whatever.
Yeah. Can I also say my third thing that this podcast accomplished where I went, where we can be done and it'd be fine, is when people were talking about Ryan Beck's mom's vagina.
Right.
I think those are the three moments for me that I'm like, we've accomplished it, you know?
And that was 5 years ago. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's been the topic of news for years. People have been.
Which he refuses to acknowledge the fact that 2 of 3 members of the Rad Dude Cast were invited to his wedding. I was not. You guys were. I was not. And he goes, nah, man, that was so funny. I love you. And then somehow I don't go to his wedding. I go, I'm pretty sure it's because I talked about his mother's pussy for an hour.
Well, she might be a listener. She might have went, not Greg. He brought it up.
He was like, yeah, I do love you. But you have to understand, if you come to my wedding, my mom is going to punch you in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, she, to her account, she might have a big one. And she might be insecure about it. And she might be like, he brought up my cavernous gaping hole.
Well, you're missing what I think is the obvious explanation, is that she's a listener, and she told him, "You can't have that Greg Stone at your wedding because I will fuck the shit out of him."
Right,
I
right.
think that's the most likely scenario. You talk about a lady's pussy that much, and she's gonna get heated.
Right. Wet
Wet.
like a funny joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I looked at you. I looked right at you to see if I got a laugh.
Yeah, you got one.
A
couple.
That one, buddy.
Couple chuckles.
Yeah.
You ever get one of those
And a
guys?
bend over.
I don't want to say the comedian's name, but there's a comedian who every time he does a joke, he goes, like he looks at the people. My mom does it too, which I don't mind saying, but
Yeah.
like this open smile, like funny.
Yeah, it's
No.
terrifying.
It's very scary.
Oh man.
But anyway,
You know, it might be fun. This thought had just come to me, and just strike it down if you want. For the $15, I know we were tentatively going to watch. Not tentatively, we're going to watch Cradle to the Grave. What if we opened it up for emails for the $15 episode?
I would prefer
and
that.
We'll answer anybody listening to this episode. Not email. What's the best method? I mean,
they
you could
all
text me.
are you crazy? They all know how to get in touch with us.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
get in touch with us.
Figure out the best way to get in touch
Put
with
in
us.
the Rad Dudecast After Dark.
Yeah, put in the Rad Dude Cast After Dark, and just whatever you guys, any questions that you have. It could be about characters. It could be
Right.
about backstory of characters. It could be about just the podcast in general. It could be about the inception. Whatever questions under the sun that
Right.
you have, we will attempt to tackle them all on the $15 episode. We might be looking at a 6-hour.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Listen, I'm going to be honest here. Last time we went, we were like, we got to do the thing, and I went, we should watch Cradle of the Grave, and everyone just went, yes. But I don't love that idea.
Yeah, I
especially
wanna-
for the
well,
last 15
that's
hours.
what
Week
I
should be
gotta
about the
say-
podcast ending.
Yeah, I gotta say that's what I've been loving about the text threads, like in the last 2 weeks, is me just repeating the idea that Greg said we were gonna do, and him going, "I don't know about that." Like it was my idea. Like
Brendon, that's not a good enough
talking
idea.
about Cradle. No, we got to do something big for that. You said it.
I know.
Guys got a loose hold over ideas.
It's so funny because I didn't want to hurt Brendan's feelings about not doing an
So
idea
funny.
that he seemed to like it. And I went, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I hate that idea. And you're like, yeah, you're just trying. Yeah, I don't want to hurt your feelings about an idea I said. Like, I don't love we already did the Mortal Kombat. We did those.
Yeah.
We've done
Yeah,
movie things before. and it's
also-
like,
Yeah, and also you can't hurt my feelings because it's your idea.
I know,
So
and I hate it.
I'm immune to it. I'm immune to it because I didn't think of it. I was just trying to peg us down to something, and know if I had to watch Cradle to the Grave or not. So this is way better. Send us your questions at any available form. Rad Dudecast After Dark is probably the easiest, but you can
anything, comments.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can send me an Instagram, whatever you want, and we'll answer everything.
And I will say this though, for your own knowledge, if you're trying to get us to do a character, you gotta send a you gotta send a clip. You gotta get us somewhere on the board to what that character
Yeah.
is.
And
just
even if,
send a. Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
yeah, if there's stuff that you're like, man, I'd always want these two characters to meet, and what
Right.
would that be like? That's fun. But yeah, like what Greg was saying, be explicit about the
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
We do not remember.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, best case scenario, you just do a screen grab of the audio from the episode. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
So we can know it. But that'd be fun.
Even better case scenario, video of yourself doing the voice. That
That's-
should get us in the ballpark. That
Yeah.
should get us in the ballpark.
Just let us know whether or not you want us to post it because I'll post it because I'm still trying to build Rad Dudecast. I can't turn promotion off.
As per the contract,
Right.
you'll be benefiting Greg.
It's not even for me. I still go on the thing and I go, you guys check out the Rad Dudecast. And people are like, well, when did it end?
Yeah.
It's like saying, check out Seinfeld.
Right.
It's over 5 years ago.
Hey, Mike, how long have we been going? Because I got to piss real bad, dude. Real bad.
This one's been about an hour.
Okay. Do you guys want to keep talking? Because I got to piss, but also we could end it. But I just got to
Go piss. Just go piss. And if we're here when you come back, we're here. If we're not, we're not. Which I
Well,
love to
also,
say.
I got to
Brendan might
take care of
just
the
be-
baby. So,
Right. I mean, I say
Oh, right,
it's
we can go.
It's been an hour, and I
That
say
sounds
for the
good.
$15 episode, we go as long as the questions last. You know what
There's
I mean?
gonna be no you know that there's gonna be no question.
yeah, they never
No.
ask questions for some reason.
Yeah, but this is different. This is the last episode.
I'll also put it in the Rad Dude Cat. I'll put it in the Greg Visionarium group text.
Good. Yeah, and during the live episode, we can bring that up. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Right.
Tweet
Tweet it. Go ahead,
Also,
Brendan, sorry.
I'm going to write in 40 questions. So that's fine.
That's kind of fun if
Yeah.
we have questions for each other.
I'm gonna write in a bunch of this is Greg based questions. Greg,
Yeah.
what's your favorite thing that you did? And
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor,
Greg-
this is all going to fall on Mike's poor shoulders.
Greg, would you
Yeah.
mind doing an hour of stand-up? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I love you, motherfuckers. Big
Love you,
time.
man.
Love you too, man.
Later.
Bye.
Peace.
The Rad Dude Cast is hosted by Anthony DeVito, Brendon Air, and Greg Stone. Original music by Brian Zippert. Produced by Mike Suarez. Executive producers Brendon Air, Greg Stone, and Anthony DeVito. Executive producers Matt Kleinschmidt and Robert Kelly for the Laugh Button Podcasts.